Hi, Jim Roddy here from the RSPA, jumping in before today's podcast to make sure you know registration is now open for Retail Now 2025, the Retail Technology Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event. Join RSPA and Retail IT channel leaders live and in person July 27th through the 29th on the Strip in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace. With nearly 200 exhibitors, Retail Now is one-stop shopping for VARs and ISVs. And with an expected 1,600 or more attendees, it's the place for extreme industry connectivity. Across just 48 hours, you'll meet new partners and new solution providers who can accelerate the success of your business. Now, as I record this, early registrations are trending well ahead of many prior years, so don't miss out on what could be the best Retail Now ever. If you're serious about the Retail IT channel, you have to attend Retail Now 2025, again, July 27th through the 29th in Vegas. Retail Now is where the industry meets. For all the details and to register at discounted early bird rates, visit the Retail Now website today at gorspa.org/retail now. Again, gorspa.org/retail now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we talk with leaders in the retail IT channel about their leadership journeys and what they've learned along the way. And in this episode, we're going to talk with two special guests who are both leading startup companies. Philip Wegner is the CEO of TechGrid, a company he established in 2021. TechGrid's a platform built for VARs and MSPs designed to improve the manual quote-to-cash process. Prior to launching TechGrid, Philip was the founder and CEO of Secure Edge Networks, a managed services provider headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. Philip, welcome to the Trusted Advisor.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Philip, I remember when our paths crossed back in VARTech, I guess a year or two ago, and you did a product demo for me, and I was like, that is really neat. You guys would be a great fit for the association. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad VARTech happened so we could make this podcast today happen.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
You bet. Our second guest is Shawn Harris. He's the co-founder and CEO of Coworked, which has developed a product called Harmony, which is billed as the world's first AI project manager. Shawn's also currently a fellow at the Black Venture Institute, and he's a member of TBD Angels. Now, previously, he worked for Zebra Technologies for 7 years, TJX for 5 years. He was a founder or co-founder of several other startups, and he served 8 years in the Army National Guard. Shawn, thank you for your service, and great to talk with you today.
I'm glad to be here, Jim. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And I remember when we first met at NRF a few years back, and I'm glad everybody else went to the main floor. I went to the lower floor, and I'm glad you were exhibiting there. It was great to meet with you then.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we crossed paths, and here we are today. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of the RSPA.
No, thank you. And I'm so glad both of you guys are members of the association. And I gave a one-sentence description of each of your organizations, but I'm hoping each of you, starting with Philip, can you tell our audience about the story of when and how your company started and then what it looks like today? So Philip, if you could tell your startup story first, please.
Sure. Well, I started a technology integrator back in 2006. And if you remember back that far, I think both of you guys have been in the industry that long. It was when Wi-Fi networks and those types of things were very innovative. And so I started a company deploying those big networks at the time in schools, hospitals, airports, and things like that. And then as I grew that company over the years, I just grew really frustrated with how we were functioning internally. And having like one system talk to another system, building these kind of online experiences for our customers. You know, the customer is really expecting an Amazon style experience and where they can log in, see what's going on. And we couldn't make that happen. And so what I ended up doing is buying a software company in 2019 and then started building a lot of those components to actually run that company. And I wasn't visionary enough to think that I would be offering that to other companies, but we ended up selling off the MSP business and then packaging that software and selling it to other MSPs and VARs.
Interesting. And so tell me about your company today. How many employees do you have?
Yeah.
How, I guess
Yep.
if you could also talk about how it's financed, if you don't
Yeah.
mind answering
Yeah.
that question, the verticals you focus on.
Yeah, so we're currently selling software to MSPs and VARs who are supporting business customers. We support MSPs and VARs that are across all business verticals, selling to retail, selling to hospitality, selling to manufacturing companies, whatever. Our product will fit kind of all those. We actually did recently raise money. I'm assuming that's why you're asking the question. But Arnie Bellini is a major backer who was the founder of ConnectWise.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we really self-funded. The money that was that cost to build the software, we were using the profits of the main company to fund the development of the software. It wasn't until just a year and a half or so ago that we raised any sort of outside funding. And it was really had a lot to do with Arnie being kind of the godfather of the MSP industry, and then meeting him at an event, and then one thing led to another. But prior to that, we were primarily self-funded, and we're mostly a bunch of software developers at this point. Most of our team is made up of people building things, and then we have a very small core team outside of that. So we have roughly 30 employees today.
Got it. Excellent. I have to say, Arnie Bellini actually spoke at an RSPA event one time. He
Yeah.
was bringing that whole managed services as a service model to this industry. I'll never forget, he
Interesting.
spoke. He had a couple VARs on stage with him, and then they
Yeah.
opened up to the microphone. Any questions? And a longtime reseller got up to the microphone, and his first words were, "This will never work." But now that reseller, his son is now running the business, and I just talked with him recently, and now about 2/3 or 3/4 of what they do is all on a recurring revenue basis. So I was
What's
thrilled that
so
Arnie
funny
went
about that
from,
is that it's the IT industry that's actually reluctant to change in some instances, which is amazing.
The ones driving change, yeah.
yeah, it's all worked out in the long run. So Shawn, tell us your story. Tell us about Coworked and how it came to be and what it is today.
Yeah, so back in 2023, a couple of my co-founders and I got together. We had known each other for well over a decade, and we're kind of having exploratory conversations with retailers about AI and kind of where we thought it was going. And from some of those conversations, we started to realize this little kernel of a pain point that we were hearing. And oddly enough, it was centered around something that is a perennial problem with retailers, and that is the coordination of in-store deployments that they do on an annual basis, and making it such that, when store tech wants to do something versus when HR wants to do something versus when real estate wants to do something, that there is a harmonized schedule that's built to reduce the impact on store operations. And it was in this conversation that we, started to kind of hear about the thing we had personally experienced, but hear more about the contemporary issues of the cognitive load on project managers. Like, I can't do all of this because it keeps changing, and things are slipping through the cracks. And literally from that little bit of an inkling from a very large retailer, we started to ideate on and build Harmony. Harmony is an agentic project manager that is able to execute projects from end to end as a coworker within the enterprise. But it was from that kernel of an interaction with a retailer, validated with a few others, that led us to build the platform. And this is back in 2023.
Got it. And so you focus solely on retail. Can you talk about if you're willing to share it, how you're financed, and then how many full-time employees you have, or FTE equivalents?
Well, I'll one thing to update you on there is we are now across industries.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, we support both retailers. We have a semiconductor company. We have an enterprise technology company we have a company an energy company in Jakarta that's looking. We're talking to a bank in Bahrain. Like, literally, it is fundamentally a project manager that can work across projects. We initially self-funded the business. Got accepted into Techstars and got a little bit of money from Techstars. We recently raised institutional venture capital. So now we are a VC-backed startup, which it always blows my mind to hear the stats here. But even though we hear about it happening all the time, still like literally 1% of startups are venture-backed. So we are venture-backed now, and we are raising a round right now to kind of that will get us through to our Series A.
Got it. Great. And how many people do you have?
10. We have 10 full-time equivalents working on this. Yeah. Majority are product folks.
Got it. See, it's funny because RSPA has 10 employees as well. I'm like, there's a parallel, but I'm like, we've been around for 77 years. We know where to start in terms of raising, capital or anything of that nature. So totally different, there's some similarities, but then there's things that are totally different between a startup and an established company. And so, Shawn, if I can stay with you and ask you, because, we have a lot of startups that are inside the RSPA. I don't know of any where it was like smooth sailings, with no turbulence. From day one. Can you tell us about a significant obstacle or challenge that you've encountered as a startup leader, and then how you navigated it?
Yeah, I guess like as I sat and I thought a little bit about this question. Gosh, there are just on a daily basis, there's probably more things that I run into as challenges than I've more things I've forgotten than actually stay resident. But I would say like the greatest challenge that you have as a startup founder is bringing the right people onto the bus, right? And for what it's worth, getting people off that bus as necessary as well. And so there's always this ideal of, for what it's worth, hire slow and fire fast. And because at this stage, when you're 10 people, when you're potentially less, you need to have what they would call like the A caliber folks on your team, bringing to bear the vision and the mission of the enterprise of your venture. And if you don't, it can be detrimental to the limited resources that you have. And so I would say, for us, I've been very thoughtful about the individuals that we bring on to the mission to get things done. And when you ask about, what are the things that you run to that you haven't gotten right, I'm very thoughtful about it, but you still can get it wrong. Being fast with being decisive with decisions, being driven to bring people to bear that's based on what are going to be the principles of your organization is key. And I'll center there, but it's been around hiring and firing of folks that we've had to navigate even as a small company.
Got it. Yeah, because your product will take you so far, but your people have to develop and advance your product and
your
everything.
People are everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Philip, can you tell us a story about an obstacle or challenge that you encountered and how you overcame it?
Well, I agree with Shawn that like if you're signing up to run a small business or be part of a startup, you're really signing up for challenges. And so you're really signing up for turbulence, if you will. And so like every day you're trying to figure out something new because you're establishing a path that really hasn't been gone down before, at least for your own company. But specifically for me, the real big transformational thing for me was the pandemic, because at the time I was running an MSP. Our major customer base was retail at the time. And we were going into 2020 thinking we're going to crush it. I was hiring people like crazy. We hired a big director, VP of sales, and then we hired a bunch of salespeople because we'd really figured out the as a service model you were talking about. And our goal was to go into retail and just absolutely print where we're just going to redo this over and over again. And then the pandemic hit and everything halted overnight. And I think our revenue dropped by 60% in 1 month because our major customer that we had millions of dollars slated for that year went bankrupt, literally, very, very quickly. And then essentially what we were doing got halted. It just completely stopped. And what's really funny about looking at us today is at the time we were playing around with software. I'd already bought a software company. We were building some things, but we were kind of still in the MSP business and we had some software. When the pandemic hit, I remember calling my product manager and saying, okay, we're going to build software. And in my mind, I'm thinking we're going to build software until we die, because I don't see how we're going to make it through through this thing. And what ended up coming out the other side is that we had built a platform and all this kind of things. And what was transformational for us is we never would have had time to build if it wasn't for the pandemic. If the pandemic wouldn't have hit when it hit at the timing, we never would have had the time to really to build what we have today.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask both of you this question, but Philip first, since you brought it up, you said, like, when you're running a startup, you're signing up for turbulence. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you go get a job where there's less turbulence? Like, why do you do this?
I don't know, man. I think it's something it's a DNA thing, where there's like just a personality trait, whether it's stupidity or this belief that you can do something. Because literally, if you just look at the numbers, like just pure math, and what Shawn said earlier, like they've raised venture capital. Almost nobody raises venture capital. So he's already like in the less than 1% of like startups, and then like the numbers are like 83% of those companies fail, And so You're signing up for something. I think you really have to have some sort of purpose-driven reason to do it. And hopefully that really is why, is you're a missionary, not a mercenary. And that's really, for me, it was always the kind of the thing is I feel like I'm a man on a mission. And so that's going to require me to go through some pain.
Got it. Yeah. And you said, sometimes it might be stupidity. And I've always liked the quote, there's a very fine line between bravery and stupidity. And 100%. Sometimes you don't know which line you're on. Shawn, why are you in the startup world?
Yeah, so definitely been asked this question quite a few times. And, parts of me say that, from a nature perspective, that I definitely think I have a little screw loose that is willing to take the risk, right? At least like the perceived risk, right? Because fact is, like, there's risk in even having a full-time job, like in terms of like how that all works. I think a lot of folks realize that to be the case. And so I think that from a nature perspective, I think I have a little bit of screw loose. From a nurture perspective, I literally grew up around a lot of entrepreneurship as well. And so I got to see it with my own eyes. I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and said, okay, I can do this. I can be that, right? And so I think the combination of the two lent itself to me having a willingness, a tolerance to it as well. And I would be wrong for not saying I have an extremely supportive wife, extremely supportive wife who allows me to do what I do.
Excellent. The mindset thing makes me think of, I had a coworker who, I remember he had to be out for because he had to have neck surgery. I'm like, man, why do you need, neck surgery? He was like in his late 50s. And he said, well, I served in the military. I did a lot of, skydiving. And then he did extreme altitude skydiving, but he obviously couldn't do it anymore. And I said, do you miss it? And he just said, every day, like I cannot find the rush, being this close to the ground. And that's, I think, sometimes how entrepreneurs are, right? People who lead startups, right? They need that rush. They couldn't, even if they were making more money somewhere else, you're getting a steady paycheck, they need that adrenaline. And that's again, the parallel that I draw. So let's talk about the difference between being inside an established organization, right? Philip, you built up Secure Edge, right? Had an established organization. Shawn, you worked at Zebra, as I said, 7 years, and now you're leading startups. So Philip, if you want to go first, like, what do you see as the biggest difference between leading at an established company versus something that's more of a newco?
Well, I'm a firm believer that if you scale an established company well, then you're building it around small teams. And this is a kind of a philosophy that I have, is that you really want to build small teams that are effectively building something or doing something. And what happens at a large company, or the tendency is, you end up getting with a lot of this kind of communications overhead and collaboration overhead. And so you end up with just this meetings fest going on internally. And so you go to a big company and you're like, hey, what'd you do today? I had 7 meetings, where there's meetings with customers. No, they're all internal. Okay. Well, you're literally just collaborating across team. Like, who is actually doing work? And the really hard part when you're scaling a business is keeping that from happening as you start to grow your company. So I'm a big believer in working backwards. If you've read that book, a lot of the Amazon style of leadership and Spotify and some of these other organizations have adopted the same type of organizational structure where they have small teams with single threaded leaders. And so they're really good at building these small teams that are building something and working on something, and then having a leader that their entire job is to accomplish that particular goal. And so I think that's, as we grow TechGrid, that's going to be kind of the style that we're going to use to grow the company.
Yeah, small teams. I worked for a couple brothers who were entrepreneurs, and they would always talk about independent standalone operating units.
Yes.
Right. Even though they owned all of them, they made sure that they could have some level of independence. Right. Maybe they shared the same handbook and accounting systems and things like that. But is that kind of what you're saying, Philip? You've got to make
100%. There's entire books written on the subject. And then there's a lot of really good ones specifically about how Amazon scaled. That is really, really good. There's another good one by Jeff Lawson, the founder of Twilio, where he talks about building with small teams.
Love it. Thank you. I've written that down. So working backwards, I will check that out. So
Awesome.
Shawn, what's the difference working Zebra, working an established company versus startup world?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is the degree of support that you have within a large enterprise. So like literally, there is going to be an individual who can make your PowerPoint, right? There's going to be an individual who, will help you reset a password. There's going to be an individual who's going to help and, maybe you need help with like, I don't know, writing an email or doing something like this. There's somebody for everything inside a large enterprise. And I think that's just a function of the need for specialization because of the need for maybe, having individuals that are going to be doing a given task the most optimally. As a startup founder and having the startup mindset, you need to be a generalist. You need to be able to cover a lot of bases. And I think that gives you the, sure, you're going to be not as deep in a lot of things, but you understand very clearly the interconnection between a lot of different disciplines within an enterprise. It serves itself. Being a generalist is a key thing that's required in a startup. It serves you very well in the space. It doesn't serve you very well in a large enterprise. And I guess unless you're doing, entrepreneurship, right, where you're given the opportunity to, run a net new thing within the enterprise. And that's certainly the ideals of what that looks like and takes is a whole nother conversation as well. But those are the things I think about: support and specialization.
Interesting. And so I'm good for those on YouTube. I'm turning my camera a little bit. You can see a magazine cover on there. From age 23 to 28, I published a sports magazine. So I owned my own business. It was up in Northwest Pennsylvania. And after going through that experience, I remember thinking, there are a lot of countries that have a year of military service that's mandatory. I thought, man, there should be a year of self-employment that is mandatory because it totally changes your perspective, right? Because if you work for somebody, you're like, I need a paycheck. I need this. I need that. You take care of me. And I was like, my, payroll was going to the mailbox, crossing my fingers, right, opening up, like, oh, good, checks are here. And like you said, Shawn, like nobody's bringing in donuts, right? Because it's just you, to start off with from that standpoint. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't think I could get elected president on that platform, but I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on actually literally on both fronts. One, the year of service I think would be wicked. Just having lived it, I think it would be foundational. Second is my alma mater, actually Babson College, which is known for entrepreneurship, for the undergrads. They do that. Pretty much every undergrad needs to run a business. Wow. Every undergrad needs to run a business. Yeah. So great. It's part of the learning there.
All right, Philip, will you join my crusade that everybody has a year of mandatory?
Oh, my kids! My kids are already trying to sell stuff to people. Like I have a 10-year-old little girl, and she's already like she will take something from your desk, paint it, and then sell it back to you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Very good. I looked at it as like I don't have an official master's, but I had no debt from the, I guess I had a little bit of debt, but I was able to pay that back pretty quickly afterwards. But boy, what a learning experience it was, right?
100%.
It is,
That's amazing.
Walking on a tightrope with none. And again, I was running a really tiny micro business, but a lot of lessons there. All right, enough about that. And we're going to pause to let our listeners and viewers know about the Retail Solution Providers Association. The RSPA is North America's largest community of retail technology VARs, software providers, vendors, and distributors. To accelerate your success through an RSPA membership, whether you're an established company or a startup, email membership at gorspa.org. Also, we want to thank these companies who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsors, Blue Star. Our gold sponsors are Cocard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. And then finally, want to make sure everybody knows registration is now open for Retail Now 2025, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event. This year's event is set for July 27th through 29th at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. For more information, visit gorspa.org/Retail Now. Retail Now is where the industry meets. All right, so you guys have shared a lot of your company stories and intertwined some of your, personal leadership traits in there. And Shawn, I'm hoping you can take this question first. So how would you describe your leadership style? Are there like a few overarching words or phrases that represent what you're striving for as you lead Coworked?
Yeah, I've kind of relied on this ideal pretty much my whole career, that I'm an individual that is democratic but decisive. When it comes to running any team, whether it's a team internal to a large enterprise or it's a startup, making decisions and moving is important. And so the democratic side of me and curious soul in me wants to hear the ideas and thoughts and considerations. And if an individual has a decision that will be value add to what we're trying to accomplish, let's go. If we are fumbling around trying to figure out what to do, I will decide what to do, right? And push and push and push. And so I like to characterize myself classically as being democratic but decisive.
And democratic, just to expand on that, you're talking about like make sure everybody's weighing in, getting feedback, having the dialogue back and forth. Is that how you would describe when you say democratic?
Yeah, everybody might be an overstatement. Those who are willing those who are actually actively and willing to contribute to making a decision, 100%, right? But I'm not going to like seek everyone if they're not trying to be an active and engaged part of that process. And when it's all said and done, we're going to make a collective or individual decision quickly to move forward. So that's speed, especially in a startup life. Speed is very important because every delay is a incremental deduction in your available resources, right? And so decisions matter and they need to happen fast.
Excellent. Philip, can you describe your leadership style?
Well, first of all, I love what Shawn said there, and I think it's really important to have an environment where people are open to say what they're thinking. And I think a lot of people in a leadership position think that, oh, I'm the leader, I tell people what to do, and that is really a dumb approach. Really, what you're doing is you're getting the best idea and then bringing the best idea forward. And so we always have a conversation internally, and I'll call somebody and say, hey, I need you to debate me on this. And what I'm not looking for is for them to agree with me. What I'm looking for is tell me what I have wrong. I'll actually say, hey, can you tell me what's wrong with what I'm getting ready to say? Like put your critical hat on. Because if you're in a position like Shawn is in where you're running a company, people can come and just have this yes mentality because Shawn's the boss. But if you come in and it's positioned as, hey, we need to get to the right idea, and if your idea is better than mine, we need to know. I think I think what Shawn said is really, really important. What I would add is, and what I want, and I don't know that I have this is, so I'm gonna be aspirational, but I really want to be a servant leader. And a lot of people in business, they're like, oh, you run your own company, so isn't it great being the boss? And I'm like, No, that's actually not at all what it means. What it means is if I have 1,000 customers, I have 1,000 bosses, and if I have 10
Mhm.
investors, I have 10 more, and if I have 50 employees, I've got that to deal with as well. And so, really, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be able to serve all those people effectively, and that's actually the really hard part. I think about being a CEO. So I'm like thinking about a lot of things, like when I'm working with a customer. How can I serve you? Because that's literally how we make money. If I can serve you and provide value with what we're building, then you're going to pay me a lot for that, right? So there's an exchange of kind of value there. And if you're an employee that's coming to work for TechGrid, I want to be able to provide a great environment so when you come in, you want to work and you want to do a good job. And so I'm really thinking about how can I provide the best environment possible for you to do a good job. And so I really want to be and try to be a servant kind of leader.
Yeah, and let me follow up on that. And Sean, I'm
Very
going to ask you this question as
good.
well. So, like Sean just talked about the speed which you have to move forward. If you have a company that's been established for a while and people are like, well, here's how the culture is, right? It's either, open, everybody can exchange, or people say, hey, watch what you say. So I guess, Philip, how do you as quick as you can, establish that open communication that people feel comfortable telling the owner of the company, the boss that many of them perceive to be, even though you say, don't call me that. How do you
Yep.
get them to be able to speak up? Or is it just the people that you hire? How do you do that?
I think it's a combination of all those, but it's really creating an environment where you encourage people to disagree. And that doesn't mean that you're all out fighting. That just means that you have productive disagreements. And if I can go into a
Mm,
meeting with a 25-year-old, straight out of school or whatever, and have that person like challenge me, then I feel like that's very, very good and very, very healthy in the right kind of way. And so it's something that I've literally tried to foster. I think, but just like tactically, one way that is to speak last in the meeting. So if you have like something that you're going to weigh in on, you don't go, "Hey, let me tell you what I think," and then what do you guys think? Because they tend to go, "Whatever you think." So it's like, "Hey,
yes, sir, Mr. Wegner,
Danny,
one of the finest.
yeah,
Another
hey,
fine
Danny,
idea from you,
what do you
sir.
think
Yeah.
about this?" And then have that person weigh in first. I'm not always good at that because
Yeah.
I have strong opinions, but that ideally you would speak last.
Got it. My old
Yeah.
boss used to, in meetings, he would write down smart silence on the agenda, and then when he wanted to speak, he would just retrace it. Like that kept him from
It's
jumping
so
in
hard. Yeah.
too soon. So, Sean, how do you? Again, you talked about that, democratic. How do you get
Yeah.
people to talk?
Yeah. So sticking like on the Democratic side, one thing that I know within Cowork that I've been really driving home is the fact that we are in this together. Like this is not just about Shawn. This is not just about my other co-founders, Sulak or Ravi. This is about us. We are in this together, and we have a door wide open to emergent ideals and ideas. Just because of, I mean, she's the very nature of what we're doing is still novel and new, right? Where we're building a capability that is probabilistic in nature, that is doing work, right? And so one of the things, it's words. It's first through words, it's then through action. And I love what Philip was saying about speaking last, about really making sure that everyone, again, the democratic side of me, making sure that everyone I hear in meetings, that everyone who's in that meeting, I'm hearing kind of what they have to say. And then for what it's worth, I'm very good with like that's a great showing it, proving it through action that we are accepting of anyone's idea, and I think that that speaks volumes. And if you're talking about, I think you might have had a little bit in your question centered around if you're going into an enterprise or an organization that kind of has a culture established where that may not be the case. Certainly, I think those things that I just mentioned still stand true, but then it just takes time to actually show people that you are genuine with your desire to kind of take in anyone's idea, and that those ideas actually can come in and impact the business.
Got it. Love it. The other thing I would add, just from my own personal experience, if you find yourself making a lot of statements or offering conclusions, that's going to shut down conversation because of the title
Mm,
that you have along with it. But if you're asking questions and then saying to people, I'm not trying to lead you into something, like I'm genuinely
yeah.
looking for your unvarnished opinion here, and then praise the people who give a differing opinion. So, all right. Well,
There's a
that's a great.
saying. There's a
Oh, go ahead.
saying like there's a saying along the lines of the question is the answer. right, as a
Right. That's
leader
right.
and being, and I think that's super important. So I plus one on that.
Amen. So let's talk about some experiences from early in your careers that have shaped you both as leaders. And Philip, first, do you have a story, you have a learning experience that's really stuck with you and shaped you as a leader? You talked about something like at COVID. I'm curious if you go back even further, like really in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
early days, you're like, boy, was this formative in me being a startup leader.
Yeah, so I would, a lot of my shaping, I think, was from my parents, and it was before my career. I didn't have a tremendous amount of mentors in a traditional sense. And so a lot of the things that I took into my career came from my parents. And my dad was actually a Baptist minister, and my
Mhm.
mom was a school teacher. And I just remember growing up when my dad would be a minister at a church. And I remember one thing specifically when in a small church environment. I don't know if you guys are churchgoers or not. It doesn't matter. But in this kind of environment, you have essentially elders that vote on the minister. And I remember being in my parents' green station wagon with the wood paneling on the side and waiting in the car while the church was voting on my father.
Hmm.
And it was just like this thing where I watched my dad serve, and then the people that he was serving were basically voting on whether they were going to keep him or not. And that was a really kind of a pivotal thing. But what was pivotal for me is my dad saying, I don't think I'm supposed to go anywhere. Like he basically was saying, I think
Mm.
that I've been called to be here. And until I feel like I'm not going to go anywhere. And it filled me with this, like looking back, there's a will that my dad had where I watched him work and serve, and then he would not waver on that. And for whatever reason, I think that's really embedded in me, and it's just like a character thing or a not quit thing, you know. And so as long as I feel like I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not going to stop. And that was something that my
Yeah.
parents kind of gave me.
Great story. Great that you drew that from that experience. Shawn, what's an early learning experience that you want to share that's been really influential on you as a leader?
Yeah, if I could like just double down on the idea of like uh my parents, specifically my father was so instrumental in my development as a curious soul. He fed me. He was actually by my side in terms of being like the same sort of person who was willing to take in net new things, to have a growth mindset. And I think it's just served me so well in life as a foundational element to who I am. I would say secondarily, my experience in serving in the army, being responsible for, operating a tank, being responsible for the people who were in under my purview, like I think was also a time of understanding what it meant to be a part of something bigger than me, and at the same time learning for what it's worth how to manage to, if you will, the commander's intent, to manage to having like a plan, but also like making it such that individuals know the right things to do is something that is very it's a part of my way of working today with all of our team members, co-founders, partners, customers, and certainly will be beyond.
And it sounds like so thank you for that, Shawn. And it sounds like because of both of your experiences, those are just now how you're wired, right? Like you don't even have to think about
100%.
it secondarily, and other people don't have that shared experience. And sometimes you're probably looking like, geez, why aren't they behaving in this way? But it seems like it's that that foundation really at your core that just causes you to operate like you do every day in a leader as a startup.
You got it. You got it.
Excellent. So, one of my goals in 2025 is to be brave enough to ask this next question to every leader who's appearing on the Trusted Advisor and Talking Leadership. So, and Shawn, if you can be brave enough to go first with this. So, Becca, you operated a tank, so we know this is this is going to be you
Yeah.
passed this test before. So, can you tell us about a mistake that you made as a leader and what you learned from it? Again, it could be recent, it could be a long time ago, it could be a colossal disaster, it could be just where you fell short. So again, a mistake you made and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I guess as you're navigating through I say enterprise, there are classically three different lenses that you're working through. One is the for what it's worth, political lens. There's the strategic, and then there's the cultural. And I think that as a leader, I have I can think of some vivid memories that I won't be specific on, but I can think of times when I have fumbled the ball on the political, right? Truly understanding the soft power that's at play, the individuals who are, um, for what it's worth, truly in control of a situation is not necessarily positional. And I feel like I've gotten that wrong. As an individual who, any individual who is trying their best to lead from where they are, I think keeping a sharp uh, perspective, keeping an open mind to these factors, to these lenses, again, the political, the strategic, and the cultural, where the political can be aligned to things where I, I, maybe the structural, um, the structure of the enterprise is not necessarily the lines of power in the enterprise. That culturally, there are the ways that things happen within an organization that have nothing to do with what's in the employee handbook
Mm-hmm.
and strategic, making sure that you are aligned to what the company is trying to accomplish, right? Are three key things that I would ask individuals to kind of hold close to as they're trying to engage in an enterprise.
And political people think like, ooh, politics, that's bad. But are you talking about when you say political, just in terms of like the whole people dynamic, like being people smart, being people interaction smart, and how all those
Yeah,
dynamics work? Just am I understanding
a-
that correctly?
absolutely. But there is a people have agendas, and you need to be very thoughtful about what is the motivations of others. And then what I was getting at for me, I've gotten that wrong.
Okay, got it. No, thank you for that. Philip, you want to share with us time you made a mistake as a leader and what you learned
Mistakes? How
from
many time? How much time do we have? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so the ones that stick like the top of mind now is I think if you're leading a company, hopefully that means you're some sort of visionary, if you will, and you see the future, or you know where your company is going to go. Specifically, you're building a product like Shawn or myself. Hopefully, you've got a vision for what that product needs to go. And what you probably also are, and what I also am, is you're an optimist. And so you're a visionary and you're an optimist. And I believe if you're a visionary and optimist, that's a recipe for bad decisions. And for me, specifically, what that means is, oh yeah, we're going to be there in 6 months. So let me go ahead and start hiring people now that I know we're going to need to have because it's only going to take us 6 months to reach that goal. And so for me, what I've consistently gotten wrong is the timeline because in my mind, again, I can see the future or what I think is correct, and then I can also oversimplify what we have to do, and then I can say, "Oh, we're going to be there faster than we are." And so what I think has to happen when you're like that, which most CEOs probably are, you got to put people in your purview that can conflict your view. So even
Yeah.
somebody that has just a hey man, are you sure this is the right? You've been saying that, and it's taken us a year and a half to build this. So just have somebody to double check really your decisions, and then for me specifically on this in a startup environment, letting the business force me to do things in some instances, like hire more
Yes.
people. Let the revenue force me to do something. Don't forecast what needs and then hire in advance. And different people think different things on that. What I just said. But that's the approach that I'm taking is I'm letting the business kind of force me into it. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
agree with you. Yeah.
I
Yeah, go
agree.
ahead,
I'm
Shawn.
sorry, I agree. I was going to say I agree as well. And there is a difficulty though. It's hard to balance allowing yourself to be in a situation where now you need to do something versus trying to act
yeah.
ahead of it. But 100% in a startup, you need to be in a position where, oh my God, I am now in that situation. Time to act
Yep.
is the way you have to operate for sure.
And that's where the importance is, the speed that you can move as an organization, right? Because if you can't
Right.
you can get too far ahead of it and then screw things up. But if you're too slow to react, then you're going to be far
Got
behind.
it.
So that's what it sounds like. What you
Yep.
guys are saying is you got to
Yeah.
stay close to the situation and then be ready to move when the situation calls for it.
Yep.
Right. Right.
Excellent. So we've only got a couple minutes left, and I definitely want to get an answer to this question. And so, and then Philip, if you can go first, I'm curious some leaders that you've looked up to as mentors who've helped you shape your leadership approach. I guess in addition to your parents, you both already talked about that. And I'm curious, like, what did they say? What did they do that's had a lasting impact on you? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are future leaders looking for mentors, and a lot of other folks
Yep.
are mentors, and I want to see what advice they can offer. So who's somebody you looked up to, and what did they say or do?
Well, currently, I really look up to Arnie Bellini, who's on the board, and but I've only had a relationship with him for a year and a half. But I'll just
Oh,
say that if you're ever able to connect with somebody that is 20 years ahead of you, literally in every way, like, or even 5 years, that's so valuable. And I was talking about earlier about the mistakes that I made. I'm running a lot of things through somebody like Arnie, and Arnie's fixing
mhm.
my perspective. But early in my career, I didn't have that. I didn't have a lot of mentors. I actually tried to um, establish them, and I was never able to do it. And so what I did is what I see behind you is I read a lot of books, and I got a lot of knowledge from reading like you do voraciously. And that's literally the things that we're doing now are things I learned 5 years ago. And then the other thing that I did that I think is very valuable and relevant to you is I think associations and getting around other leaders that are doing the same thing you're doing is so valuable. And literally, just it's not necessarily a mentor; it's really a peer. That, and this isn't a plug for you. I know that's what you do, but like literally, that's where, as I was growing my company as an MSP, that's where I was learning a lot. Is in these peer environments where I was meeting with another CEO. Maybe their company was way larger than mine. And so I could learn a lot. And what's been great about a lot of associations is that people are very, very open and sharing, even if they are technically a competitor, in another
Yeah.
market. And so I think those are all really valuable strategies.
Excellent. Thank you. Shawn, who are some leaders you've looked up to?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I am going to bring it back to family and say my brother. My brother is an executive at a very large company where he runs HR for the company, and he's the thing that he's given me is this perspective on like a first principles way of thinking about
Yes.
behavior and individuals. That has been incredibly helpful. He may not necessarily know it, but his perspective on the world from this rooted, what is the behavioral things that an individual is trying to, what are they trying to achieve? What is their motivations? Has been so valuable for me. And so I'd say like, yeah, I definitely like lean on him quite a bit. And I'm blessed to have him as a brother in my life. And then as Philip said, reading, read, read and read some more. Yeah, like it's like what do they say? Reading is fundamental. There's no if, ands, or buts about it.
Hmm.
Um, you may not per se remember everything that was in it, but there's nuggets that will stay with you, and
Yep.
those nuggets create adjacencies, and adjacencies yield the ability to innovate and think differently about a given moment. And so I think my brother's ideals around first principles, like being able to just consume things that construct then mental models and how you look at the world, so you can go, don't be reactive to a moment, but be able to step back and go, I know what's going on here,
Yep.
is just been incredibly important for me.
No, thank you for that. And I'll tie both of your answers together because the first time I engaged with the RSPA was 2006. I was president of a magazine publishing company, and I happened to connect with Mark Olson there, who's now the retired president of APG Cashflow. I was in my first year as president. He was in his 20th year, just like you said, Philip. And I connected with him there, and I was like, tell me, like, what's a secret? And that was his big thing was read and interact with a lot of people who have been there and done that before, and Mark is still
100%.
a really, really good
Yep.
friend and really helped me in those terms. Like you
Yep.
said, somebody's been down that path before, and they can share their stories and their experiences. And again, Mark was
Right.
board chair of the RSPA as well, so gotta plug the association. So, all right, we've only got a couple minutes left, and so
Sure.
I want to get your final advice for the audience. Shawn, starting with you first, and if you could put it within 60 seconds, say you're in an elevator ride and you've got a small business leader, somebody who's, maybe a startup, leader thinking about doing that. What advice would you give to them as you're going from floor 1 to floor 37?
Yeah, focus on putting yourself around good people. I think we, in the world that we live in, where there's this disconnect that's occurring, where there's so much digital medium between us all, I think it's critically important to put yourself around people who are good people, smart people, people who are just, however you want to characterize it, better than you, and let them help to level you up to them, and then put yourself around more people that are better than you. And so I think just doing that and then nurturing those relationships is number one to me.
Excellent. Philip, what would be your advice? So we got up to 437 with Shawn.
Yeah.
Now that person has to go back down. You're riding with them from 37 to 1.
I was
So
literally going to
your
say the
advice?
same thing that Shawn just said. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people is so important. And I think that applies to a lot of different parts of the business. So if you're building product, I think surrounding yourself with the customers you're building the product for helps you build a better product. And if you want to be a better leader of a company, you want to be with other leaders who've led other companies and done a good job. As humans, we tend to like people that are at our level or below, because that's what makes us comfortable. But if you get in a room with people that are at way above your level, all of a sudden it's pushing you to be something that you're not. And that is uncomfortable. But that, I think, is what helps people rise to the next level.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Very well said. Very well said.
Excellent.
Well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to the RSP YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. Before we go, big thanks again to Philip Wegner and Shawn Harris for sharing their wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSP Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSP is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, please visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.